Hello everyone and welcome to the OCX Webinar week. My name is Amandine and I'm very happy to have you all here. This series is part of the lead-up of OCX 2026, which will take part in Brussels. It's the place where the open collaboration community meets to connect, learn, and exchange ideas. If you haven't registered yet, the link is in the chat. Don't miss it. Now, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Perry, who will briefly present sponsorship opportunities at OCX. Perry, you have the floor.
Anyway, I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about our upcoming OCX 2026 conference and the fact that we do have some sponsorship opportunities available. These opportunities will provide you with great visibility of your organization, where you'll have an opportunity to have your brand up in front of 600 plus attendees. You'll have opportunities to connect with all the attendees, which are mainly developers, decision makers, and there will be some ecosystem leaders as well. This is a great opportunity for you as an organization to make these connections. We have a lot of opportunities, social activities in the evenings, as well as great opportunities during lunchtime and break. We have several, actually 5 sponsorship packages that are available, and we also can customize packages. The packages are of all different levels with a series of benefits for each. Of course, they all provide some media exposure of the sponsorship. Some of the levels include speaking opportunities. We have levels that also include access to the opt-in list post-conference. Some of the two highest levels also offer an opportunity where you can have additional exposure by sponsoring a specific co-located event. So therefore, any of the signage and any of the media mentions and so on would include you as a specific sponsor for that co-located event. Right now, the call for papers is open, so we're encouraging people to not only submit talks, but also registration just opened last week. So we're also asking people to register early, and we look forward to seeing everybody at OCX 2026. If you have any questions, or if your marketing team is interested in reaching out to us about sponsorship, I'll add a email into the chat, and please feel free to share that with your team, and we'll be happy to meet and have a discussion about sponsorship opportunities.
Thank you, Perry, for this. And now we are going to the webinar. So I will welcome Jonas, Sougandh, and Hannes. Wait, I just need to put them. Thank you. So today, we are joined by 3 speakers. Firstly, Sougandh, who will sharing his insight on smarter debugging in Eclipse tools. The tools that every developer should know. Secondly, Jonas Helming will present Theia, the next generation of AI native tools and IDEs. And finally, Hannes Wellmann, who will guide us on how to contribute to the Eclipse IDE. Feel free to post your question throughout the session using the chat or the Ask a Question tab. We'll go through them together at the end of all presentation. And of course, make sure to stay until the end, because we will have a live raffle giveaway for attendees. Now, let's get started. Sougandh, I give you the floor.
Hello everyone. My name is Sougandh. I'm a committer in Eclipse JDT project from IBM. So today we'll explore the code debugging features and the latest innovations in Eclipse Java Debugger. So we'll start with the live demo, and we'll start with the uh, basic building blocks such as launching in debug mode, stepping through your code, breakpoints, variables, and then we'll see the latest features. So let me switch to my IDE. So I'm on Eclipse IDE version 4.38 M2, which is one of the latest. And here I have a small Java program called Student Manager. So in order to launch this application in debug mode, make sure you're on the source and then right click and then click on Java application. So here, mm, you can see our program has started running in debug mode and it is printing something in the console. So we can pause the execution or suspend the execution of our running program with the help of the suspend button. And when our program is suspended, all the backing threads will be shown in this debug view. So on clicking and expanding a thread, you can see the available stack frames attached to that specific thread. And on clicking a stack frame, you can see the available variables attached to that specific stack frame. And when you're on an active stack frame, we can execute our code line by line with the help of step over. So now I'm at line number 18. Again, if I do a step operation, I'm at line number 19. And line number 19 is actually a method call to the process student. We can jump into a method call with the help of step into. So now we're inside the process student method. Here we can execute our code line by line, or if you wish to skip few lines and jump to a specific line, then you can right click on that line and then choose run to line. So now we are at line number 36 by skipping all the if blocks. So uh, we can also go back to the previous code or the previous stack with the help of step return. And there will be cases you will be step too far, and in order to reset your steps or the execution, you can click on the drop to frame. The drop to frame will simply re-executes your application from the method beginning. So instead of suspending the program manually, we can automatically suspend the application when it is about to execute a line. So for that, we can create line breakpoint. In order to create a line breakpoint, just right click on the line and click on toggle breakpoints. Once a breakpoint is created, all the breakpoints will be shown, all the created breakpoints will be shown in this breakpoints view. So here you can organize your breakpoints based on multiple grouping types or sort this based on name or creation type. And let us debug this code again. So here you can see our breakpoint has made the application suspend at line number 18, and you can resume its execution with the help of this resume. So again, it got hit at this same line. Since we put a breakpoint inside the for loop, this will ideally hit for 45 times. So the Eclipse breakpoints comes with various breakpoint properties. While debugging loops, we don't want to stop at every iteration, and for that we can depend on the breakpoint hit count property. So a breakpoint with hit count will suspend your application only when that specific breakpoint is hit for n number of times. So to add a hit count property, just right click on that variable at that breakpoint and then click on breakpoint properties, or you can access the breakpoint properties from the breakpoints views bottom layer. And now make sure you enable this hit count, and let's say we want to suspend the code when it's in the third iteration. So here we can input 3, and now on debugging, you can see our program has suspended again at line number 18. So let us inspect the variables now. So here the value of I is equal to 3. So that means we are in our program has suspended at the third iteration, since every iteration the value of I will be incremented by 1. And there will be cases you need to suspend your application when there's a complex condition arises. So let's say we want our application to suspend only when a student have a score of 25. So what we can do is can create a new breakpoint at line number 80, line number 19, and disable the one at 18 for now. And for the breakpoint at line number 19, make sure you enable this condition option. And here you can provide the condition you want your application to suspend. So since we want to suspend when a student have a score of 25. Let's give that as a condition. So once you enter the condition, just count controllers or commanders to save, and based on each breakpoint property we added, our breakpoint label will update according to it. And now on debugging, you can see our breakpoint has suspended at line number 19. Now let us inspect the variables for further details. We can see it was at the fifth iteration, I is equal to 5, and the student value. So now it is give me some default two string value, which is a bit hard to understand. So let us expand this variables value and see the fields one by one. Name is student 5 and processed false, and here the score is 25. So we can confirm our breakpoint has suspended the application when the student had a score of 25. But it is hard to expand each of these variables fields and see the value one by one, right? So for that, Eclipse provides a new shortcut, a new hack called detail formatters. So detail formatter will override your current two string implementation of the particular class without modifying your source. So to add one, right click on that variable and then click on new detail formatter. Since we are focused only on the student name and score, we can provide the uh, formatter accordingly. So we want to see the name and the score for that student at a simple glance. So when I clicked OK, you can see our detail pane has updated with the custom formatter. And if I open the student class, still it is not modified. So there is no overridden toString method here. And it is now easier for us to analyze the values at a simple glance. And there is one more powerful property for breakpoints, and that's called trigger. Imagine you want to suspend your code only when a specific breakpoint is hit, and you don't want to suspend your application on breakpoints before that. And at the same time, you don't want to disable or remove those breakpoints. In this scenario, you can mark the breakpoint you want to suspend as a trigger. So here, let's say we have a breakpoint at line number 15, line number 16, and line number 20. And what I want is I want to suspend my application only when the breakpoint at line number 20 is hit. So ideally, if I debug this, it will first hit at line number 15, and then I need to click on the resume again, and it will again hit for line number 16. Then I need to click the resume the application again. Then only it will hit at line number 20 if the condition at line number 19 breakpoint is false. So here, let us mark the breakpoint at line number 20 as trigger. And notice that when I marked it as trigger, the breakpoint icon has also changed it, and it also made the icons of other breakpoints change. So let's see what will happen. So let us debug the code again. So here you can see our application suspended only when the breakpoint at line number 20 was hit. So what trigger does is that it will disable all the other breakpoints other than the trigger breakpoint, and then once the trigger breakpoint is hit, it will re-enable all the other breakpoints and disable that trigger point itself. You can see the breakpoint at line number has been automatically disabled. And now if I resume my code, we can see the breakpoint at line number 16 has activated and it just got hit again. So that's what trigger does. So other than these line type breakpoints, Eclipse also have exception breakpoints, class breakpoints, and method breakpoints. So an exception breakpoint will suspend your program just before throwing an exception, just before catching that particular one. So let me just disable all these breakpoints for now. And here you can see I have an array which is of size 1, and if I try to access the 10th index, obviously this will cause an array index out of bound exception. So what I can do is I can create an array index out of bound exception breakpoint, so I can suspend my code or post the code just before throwing this particular exception. To add one, go to the run and then click on add Java exception breakpoint. Or in the breakpoints view itself, there's a small shortcut called add Java exception breakpoint, which have an icon of J exclamation. Just click on that, and now just add array index out of bound exception. So here our breakpoint has created, and let us now debug this code. So here our application has suspended just before throwing that exception. And you can see the thread was suspended because there was an exception arraying this out of bound exception, and it was caught by our breakpoint. And the class breakpoint is something that will suspend your code when a class is loaded into a memory. So here we are frequently creating a student object which is of student class. So what we can do is we can suspend this code when the student class is loaded into this memory. So for that, go to the student class, and to add a class breakpoint, just toggle a breakpoint at the class beginning itself. So now a class breakpoint has created. Notice the icon and the label for class breakpoints are different from others. And on launching this in debug mode here, you can see our application has suspended at line number 18, and line number 18 is where the student class is first loaded, and the thread was suspended because class load student. Now if I resume this code again, it won't suspend because it has already loaded the student class and it is available in the memory. And similar to this, we have the method breakpoints. So a method breakpoints is used to suspend your application when when the program enters into a method or exits from a method. Here we have a process student method. So we can add an entry method breakpoint. So to add one, just right click on that method beginning, then toggle a breakpoint. So by default, an entry method breakpoint will be created, and it will be having two modes, entry and exit, which means whether to suspend on the method entry or whether to suspend on method exit. So let us debug this. So now our program has suspended at the method entry. You can see the thread was suspended because entry into method process student in student manager. Now on resuming, it will again suspend at the method entry. So now let us make sure this check is enabled for exit. So and now if I resume, you can see our application has suspended just before exiting that method. And there's also a shortcut to create that exit method breakpoint. Just toggle a breakpoint at method exit. So this will directly create an exit method breakpoint. And when when our application is suspended in a state, we often want to test some expression or do some calculations based on the current state. So here, when the application is suspended at line number 20, we have the access of student object, and the current score of student is 21. In order to calculate the total score, we need to sum up with this internal mark. So what we can do is we can add a custom expression for that. So for that, we can go to the expressions view and then create a new expression. So let's say, since we have access to the student object at this context, say student dot get score plus internal marks. So now it has evaluated the total score for the current student, and on resuming this, you can see it then re-evaluated for the new student. And if I again resume, then it will calculate for the next student. So expressions view will automatically calculate or evaluate the expressions based on the current context or based on the current state of the application. So you don't want to manually re-evaluate for every student object. So that's about expressions. So similar to expressions view, we can also use the debug shell. So debug shell is considered as your workspace while debugging. Here you can test any expression or do any kind of activities. So let's say student dot get name plus OCX. So unlike the expressions view, the snippets we write in the debug shell need to be selected full and executed manually. So let's select the snippet fully and right click and let's do an inspect. Inspect will show you that output in a small pop-up. And if you wish to print that output in the debug shell itself, you can right click and click on display. So this will make sure the output is printed in the debug shell itself. So all this time we have debugged the code in our Eclipse or in local, and there will be cases you need to debug the applications that are in production or in different server or in complete different environment. So for that, Eclipse supports remote Java debugging. So here I have a small REST application which have two endpoints. One is a root and one is a user endpoint, and I have created a jar for that. So let me launch this application outside Eclipse. So now my server has started. Let me copy the URL and go to the browser and paste it here. So now you can see this is the root of the application, and next endpoint is the user. So user will simply print a random user data. So we will be going to debug this particular endpoint. In order to debug an external application which is running outside Eclipse, we need to launch this application with special debug or JVM flags. So let us close this and relaunch this with special debug flags. So here I have attached an agent lib which is part of Java debugging via protocol. So basically, I will be launching this application as a debug server, and I will be exposing its port to 5005. So once it is launched, we need to attach a debuggy onto this debug server. So for that, we can go to the Eclipse and go to the debug configuration. And now at the very bottom, we have remote Java application configurations. Just create a new configuration. I click, and sometimes this data will be automatically filled, and make sure you choose the connection type as attached. So we will be attaching the Eclipse onto that debug server as a debuggy, and make sure the port the host is correct and is localhost, and port here we need to specify that debug server port, and it is currently at 5005. So let's input the same here. So now apply and click on debug. So now you can see our application, our Eclipse has successfully connected to that remote application. So what we can do is we can create a breakpoint at line number 47, which is the handler for user endpoint. So let's go back to the browser and let's refresh. So you can see our application just suspended because it got hit at this breakpoint. So this is how you debug a remote application which is outside Eclipse. So these are all the core features of Eclipse, and now let's see the latest features which were added in 2025. So in large applications, this particular debug view or the stack view can get cluttered with stacks from servlet or frameworks or Java internal classes, which doesn't concern us much. So when the breakpoint at line number 47 was hit, we see other than this Rust app, which is the custom user one, there were many other stacks related to the servlet and Java internal classes, but we only focused on the Rust app. So now Eclipse offers a new option to collapse all the non-user related stacks into one. In order to enable this, go to the more option of debug view and click on Java and make sure you enable these collapse stack frames. So now all the non-user related stacks has been collapsed into one stacks, and you can expand this tree to see all the collapsed ones. So this will make your debug view organized, clean, and let you focus only on the stack that is relevant to you. And we have earlier seen the breakpoint property called trigger. So the trigger points now have a new capability, and that's continue execution on hit. So traditionally, a trigger point will suspend the application when that breakpoint is hit. So now it can automatically resume its execution based on one option. So here, so it have a lot of use cases. So here I have a small Java program called trigger point demo. So this will basically take an input value, then do a process data method, and which will process the data and print the final output. So here, what I want is I want to suspend my application at line number 14. But if and only if my program suspends or execute the code inside this if block. So that means my code should execute the code at line number 12. It's a pretty complex condition, right? And it is hard to write a conditional breakpoint for this specific scenario. It's kind of a flow-based condition. So what I can do is on the breakpoint at line number 12, we can mark it as trigger, and this time we can enable this continue execution on hit. And enabling that option, it just updated the label to resume on hit. So let us debug this and observe. We can see my application didn't suspend at line number 40. So I can confirm that this this particular flow or this application didn't execute this particular line. But if I modify the input to a positive one and run the code again in debug, we can see our application has suspended at line number 14. So what happened was, when we created the trigger point, it disabled all the other breakpoint and it got hit at this line number 12. And when the trigger point was hit, it re-enabled the breakpoint at line number 14. And since we enabled the continue execution on hit, it didn't suspend, it automatically resumed that execution. And when it resumed, we know there was a breakpoint at line number 14, so that particular breakpoint was hit. So that's how you do a flow based control mechanism with the debugger. And this is one of the use case, and there are a lot of use case with this. Like you can use these as a barrier against the unwanted breakpoints. Like you want to retain but you don't want to suspend or ignore that breakpoints, you can uh, use it for that. And if you look at the breakpoints view, um, we can see there are a lot of breakpoints now. And from the student manager itself, we have around 6 breakpoints. And at a simple glance, it is hard to identify which breakpoint is used for which section or which logic, and why I have added that in the first place. Just double clicking on the line number 15 breakpoint of student manager, you can see it was created for suspending the application just before the array list creation. And sometimes we also use the breakpoints as not just to suspend, but simply to navigate to certain parts of the code. So in large applications, this will be even more hard to identify, like which breakpoint was used for which use case. So Eclipse introduced a new feature called custom breakpoint label. So at the breakpoint for the line number 15, just right click and now click on label, or you can also click on Alt plus F2 as a shortcut. So when I clicked on the label, the current label for that has been fully selected in an inline editor. So what I can do is I can uh, clear all the existing label and I can include a new custom label. Let's say suspend before array list creation. So once you're done with the custom label naming, then click on enter. Just got some error. Let me just try that again. So suspend before array list. So now our breakpoint has been modified with our custom label and it is been highlighted with a custom font. So now it is easier for us to quickly identify this breakpoint. And if you wish to revert to the previous change, we can again click on that label and this time leave it blank, just clear everything. And now this will restore to its previous label, the default one. And if you wish to highlight this breakpoint only rather than giving a custom breakpoint name, then right click on that label again, and this time just add an empty space to the existing one. So this will make sure it will be highlighted, so you can quickly identify this. And looking at the breakpoints, we can see there are a lot of breakpoints that are enabled and disabled. So in large applications, there will be a lot of enabled breakpoints and a lot of disabled breakpoints. And sometimes the enabled breakpoints will be at the very bottom and we have to scroll and scroll a lot. Even though we apply many sorting mechanism, it will be still at the very bottom. So Eclipse, to avoid this issue, Eclipse has introduced a new grouping mechanism, and that's called group by enablement. So click on the more option and choose group by enablement. So now all the breakpoints that are enabled has been grouped under the enabled category, and all the breakpoints that are disabled are now under the disabled category. And if I make a modification to their enablement in here, it will affect the grouping. So if I enable a disable breakpoint, it will go to the corresponding grouping. So now our breakpoints are well organized. And Eclipse has also introduced a new breakpoint type, and that's called inline breakpoint. So let me take another example. So here I have a chained lambda expressions. So first I had a string which had 4 contents, and I'm doing a stream operation onto that content, which is actually a chained lambda expression. First we had the map, and then we had the filter, and then we had the map again. And there will be cases you need to suspend the code at a certain lambda in the same line itself. But if you put a normal line breakpoint, it will only suspend at this part, and you won't be able to understand what happened inside that individual lambdas. So in order to create a specific breakpoint to a specific lambda, which is in that same line as chained, just right click on that line and then click on toggle lambda entry breakpoint. So now Eclipse has shown a dialog to choose which lambda I need to create a breakpoint. So on doing a selection, you can see the corresponding lambda will be highlighted in the source. So it is, if there are many duplicate lambdas, it will be easier for us to identify which we are targeting. So here, let me create a breakpoint at the last lambda. So once you are done the selection, click on OK or click on Enter. So here our breakpoint for this specific lambda has been created, and notice the label is equal to the body of that lambda. So it is easier for you to quickly identify which lambda breakpoint you have created breakpoint. So now let us debug this and verify. So here you can see the value of C is Java, since it had 4 elements, and it did a filtration just before that which had the length less than 5. So Java had length less than 5 after trimming, and on resuming you can see the next element will be the IDE, which also have length less than 5. So that's how you do debugging for chained expressions now. And Eclipse has also introduced many new context menu options to the variables view. So let me take another example here. So let me just debug and open the variables. So here you can see we have a lot of variables, and the first feature which is added in the new context menu is the navigation to the declaration part. So sometimes in large code blocks, it is harder to find the declaration part of a specific variable if that variable has been used or referenced multiple times. So here I have a queue, and in order to quickly find the declaration part, I can right click on that variable and then choose navigate to declaration. And now this will highlight that particular variable's declaration in the source. And if I do that with the args, it will highlight that entire method in which it is defined as an argument. And it will also, and this feature is supported for primitives, arrays, and objects and everything. If I do a navigation to the price, it will highlight that price variable. So we have already seen the detail formatters. So the detail formatters has been now enhanced to support primitives and arrays. So here we have a double data type of price, and currently its value, it's decimal and it's a bit complex to comprehend. So what we can do is we can normalize this value or round off this value with more precision without changing without making changes in the source. So in order to do that, right click on that variable, then click on new detail formatter. So now let us provide the condition of the expression and map.round. And while representing the primitives, we can also go with this keyword. Eclipse will identify this particular keyword as the primitive if we mention the primitive data type here. And now just click on OK. Now you can see our value is rounded off and without modifying the source. Now it is easier for us to read. And we can also apply these to the arrays. So here we have an array of size 6. Let's say we want to focus only on the third item. So we can create a new detail formatter for that. So here mentioning arrays also, we can go with this keyword. Eclipse will identify this as the mentioned array. So let's say see only the third element. Now clicking OK, you can see the detail pane has only showed the third item. And by the way, we cannot do any complex operations with the detail formatter for arrays. It still has some issues. And the next feature is that now Eclipse will be able to compare the elements of objects based on their underlying data structure. So here I have an array list and a vector. So both have kind of similar values. One value is missing in one another. So what I can do is I can select both of these variables and do a right click and click on compare. So now Eclipse will give a summarized result of their comparison result. So here you can see the vectors item count is 4 and array list item count is 3, and array list does not include the date element. So you can see the vector had contained date and array list didn't contain that element. And comparison is not restricted to 2 elements. We can compare n number of elements, and since array list vector stack are implementing the list type, so they will be considered as the same data structure. So now
Sougandh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just to let you know that we will need to go through to the next speaker soon. So like this,
okay,
you can
just
conclude.
just give me 5 more minutes. It will be
Yeah,
done.
for sure. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so now select all this and just do a compare. If the content is more than 2, then it will open a summarized result in a new comparison editor, and it will give you the summarized values here. So you can see the vector contains every element of others, and that's why it is shown as green, and others had some missing values, and that's why it is shown as red. And you can also compare elements of a list, queue, sets, maps, and chart sequences and wrappers too. So here I have one list and another one. Both have same values but in a different order. So Eclipse will show that as list contains same elements but in a different order. And for custom types, it will compare each of its fields with each other objects. So here I have person object with age and height property. So let me just select all and click on compare. So it will again show a summarized result, like P2 how the age same in P1 and P3, and height is same in P3 but different in P1. And moving on to the next feature, so here we can also compare the value against the clipboard content. So here I have a small Java program which will generate a custom string, and that custom string will be compared against the expected one. So just running this code, you can see a session failed. So that means there was some issue with the generated and the expected one. So let us create a breakpoint at line number 6 and then debug the code again. So now let's look at and inspect at the variables view. So at a simple glance, both look same, but there may be one character mismatch or some empty random spaces it added. So what we can do is click on this expected element and just copy its content, copy. And now for the generated variable, right click on that, and now do a compare with clipboard. So the Eclipse will take the toString value of that variable or the generated variable and then compare this with the clipboard content. So now you can see there is one difference, and zooming on to the difference, you can see the generated one generated a semicolon instead of a colon. So that's why our condition failed. And the compare with clipboard also supports for primitives. So this is a primitive value, so it supports that, and it also supports arrays. So it basically for objects, it will take the toString value and do the comparison with the clipboard content. So that comes to the end of the session. I hope all of you guys will use these new features in your debugging session. And if you guys have any doubts, please post it in the chat. And over to the Jones. So I'm stopping my presentation here.
Yes, thank you, Sougandh, for this presentation. And now I will give the floor to Jonas. Oh, sorry. I took the wrong person. Yes, Jonas.
That's me.
So I give you the floor and enjoy the talk.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. I will try to speed up my presentation a little bit because we're running late in time. So let's directly dive into it. I'm Jonas. I'm working for EclipseSource. We are a company focused on building tools and IDEs. As you can tell from the name, traditionally, we have built a lot of tools on RCP and the Eclipse platform. But in recent years, Many projects we work in are web-based or are migration projects from desktop technologies to web. Today, I'm talking in my role as the Theia project lead, and I would like to talk about a project at Eclipse called Theia and why it is the next generation of AI native tools and IDEs at Eclipse. My goal for this talk is to provide you a broad overview of the project. I will only do a very short demonstration, rather focus on facts, so that at the end of the talk you have a good imagination and understanding what this project is and whether it might be interesting for you or not. All right, let's directly dive into it. Now I will have 3 slides with the same title that all says what is Eclipse Theia from a little bit different angles. So in a nutshell, Eclipse Theia is an open source web-based platform for building AI native tools and custom IDEs. And you can really build different types of tools in all sorts of domain. I would say a primary use case is to work on something that's close to source code that we see here in the middle, for example. But a lot of adopters also use it for different domains, like, for example, tracing over here. Here we have a modeling tool, and we observe use cases even in domains like railways, embedded engineering, all sorts of different domains, because it is very flexible. So if this reminds you on something, yes, it is, in a sense, a next generation of the Eclipse RCP stack. So it has a very similar use case. What does that mean in detail? So what is a platform, and what does Theia consist of? It enables you very easily to create applications that run on the desktop and on the cloud. That's very important. Even though you use web technologies in Theia, you can still deploy the whole thing as a desktop application. And that's well supported. And interestingly, most new projects even choose that as a first option and later go to the cloud. The platform provides you a very flexible workbench frame. That's what we see on the right. So you can arrange views, you have toolbars, menus, all these basic UI elements you typically need for tools. Theia provides a modular extension mechanism. Actually, there are even 2. One is a native one where you can plug in features and mix existing features with your own features. And the second one is it supports VS Code extensions, so you can get features from this huge ecosystem of available extensions out there. Then, of course, the platform provides quite a lot of existing tool capabilities for you to reuse. That is always a major advantage of such a platform. So if you need things like a code editor, a file explorer, a Git view, an output view, and you name it, all these things are already there. You can adapt them, you can add them to your project, you can remove them. So you basically have an existing library of things that you can just reuse or not, depending on your use case. And then ideally, you only have to add a little bit of domain-specific features to complete your tool. And finally, and that's pretty new because the topic is pretty new, over the last 2 years, it has become a very AI-native platform. So if you want to build a tool or IDE in the AI space, it's definitely a very interesting choice. Now, let me go to the 3rd slide with the same title. This slide, the purpose of this slide is to give you a more detailed overview on what the Theia project consists of, to enable you to better understand the different terms. Now, there are actually 4 important building blocks that the Theia project, the Theia open source projects consist of. Number 1 is the Theia platform. That's the underlying platform. And as mentioned, that's a platform for building tools and IDEs. So that's very similar to the Eclipse platform. Then based on this platform, the project also publishes one vanilla product, which is called the Theia IDE, and that's a coding environment. And that's really something you can download and use. The platform you cannot just use, you have to build a tool. But the Theia IDE is really something targeted at end users as software developers. And in a sense, it's an open version of VS Code or the Eclipse desktop version. So it's really something you can just use. And it's built on the Theia platform. Then since last year, we have 2 major new components. One is called Theia AI. That's a part of the Theia platform. And this component enables you to build AI native tools. So a lot of features that you need for this, like a chat, LLM communication, MCP support, and so on, have been added to the platform and reside under the name Theia AI. And last but not least, maybe not surprisingly, with the help of this framework, we also extended the Theia IDE into what we now call the AI native Theia IDE. So the Theia IDE contains a lot of interesting AI features specifically targeted at developers. So why do I explain this? When we do demonstration, and that's what I will also do in around 5 minutes, it's hard to demonstrate a framework because that's API. We usually use the Theia IDE as a demonstrator, but keep in mind, you can, instead of using the Theia IDE, you can also use this for your own tool. You can, of course, also use parts of the Theia IDE and mix and match them depending really on what you want to build. Now, a quick timeline on where does this project come from, how long does it exist, and what were the major milestones. The Theia project inception was in 2017. The community saw a need for a more modern platform targeting, for example, web deployment and other innovations like language server protocol. So that was in 2017. Then I would say 2018 until 2021 was the time where this framework was mainly adopted by tool builders. There was no IDE yet, but a lot of different adopters started to use this technology to build their tools. For example, the new Arduino IDE 2.0 is based on this platform, and a couple of others. I will get back to that a little bit later. Then in 2022, the first version of the Theia IDE was published. Back then it was called Theia Blueprint. The first purpose was basically to have a demonstrator on how to build a tool, but people started to use this demonstrator actually and liked it, and that's why it evolved into the Theia IDE, which is now really a tool offering in addition to the platform. Also in 2022, more commercial and big projects adopted Theia, so we enabled what we call community releases. Theia by default has a release cycle of 1 month, so every month we publish a new release. But for adopters, this was actually too fast. So since 2022, we also publish what we call a community release every 3 months that has a release branch and so on. So for if you build a tool based on Theia, it's typically a more stable choice to go. In 2023, a lot of major platform improvements were done. We worked a lot on robustness, stability, and also in 2023, we achieved full VS Code compatibility. And what that means is you can host VS Code extensions in Theia. And the cool thing about this, with the existence of OpenVSX, which is an open marketplace for VS Code extensions, you can benefit from this huge ecosystem of existing features that you can very easily make part of your own tool or even allow users to install them. Then in 2024, no surprise, the topic of AI arose, and in September 2024, EclipseSource did the initial contribution of Theia AI, and since then, this has been the main focus of the development because it's obviously one of the hottest topics in tooling and IDEs. 2025 is definitely the year of AI. A lot of innovation, new features, extensions, and so on have been done. And we are very happy just 2 weeks ago, Theia AI has won the Cody Award 2025 in the category of Best Open Source Developer Tool. This is really a very well-known award selected by industry leaders. So really happy for this recognition, and thanks to everybody who contributed to that. And I don't know what will happen in 2026. I expect, of course, that AI will be the hot topic. Now, let me do a very quick comparison between RCP and Theia, because for many here, you might have existing RCP applications. This comparison might be interesting. I will stay on a high level. So there are, of course, always details that also matter, but I will try to cover this on a high level to give you a first impression. Now, about the feature set, in RCP, I mean, it exists since 20 or over 20 years, 25 years. You basically find everything you need to build tools and IDEs, and everybody knows that. Theia, on the other hand, when it started, this was not the case, but the ecosystem around Theia grew a lot over the last year. In the meantime, I would claim the feature set of Theia is at least as complete as for RCP. And especially in areas like AI, I would say you find much more in Theia. And one huge advantage in Theia is that it's more open towards third-party libraries, for example, VS Code extensions or other web technologies, essentially. So the feature coverage might be even better. Of course, it depends on what you want to build. From a tech stack point of view, RCP, we have OSGI, Java, and SWT traditionally. Theia is built on standard web technologies. So that includes TypeScript, Node, React, basically a standard web stack. Now, why does this matter? Of course, the deployment, I will cover that in a second. But if you have existing RCP applications, and we got that reported from many of our customers, you might have issues to find people who are still skilled in OSGI and SWT in particular. Now with standard web technologies, the recruiting pool just becomes massively bigger because almost every developer out there knows Node and JavaScript and TypeScript. And we get that as a report from customers too that switch to a platform like Theia, that recruiting becomes much easier. Extensibility and adaptability, that's of course important for a platform if you want to build something custom. In RTP, you have plugins. In Theia, you have two concepts: extensions, which is the native concept to extend or adopt the platform. You can literally add anything, remove anything, change anything. Plus, there's a runtime extension concept called VS Code extensions, where you can install existing features. So it kind of covers both aspects. And from a deployment point of view, RCP is a desktop technology. And Theia, you can still deploy a desktop application, and that's a very common thing to do. But we also support browser deployment, and you can deploy Theia in the cloud, which means if you want to provide your tool online, you can basically just hand out URLs and users can use your tool or IDE in the browser seamlessly. And the cool thing is really it supports both at the same time based on the same source code. And when it comes to AI support, sorry, I have to say it's a little bit limited in RCP. I know that there's a Copilot extension now, but not so much is happening there at the moment. When Theia, I would say that's a very active area with lots of contributions from different areas. It's very extensive, flexible, and very open, as I will show you in a sec. Now, talking about AI. So in the core of the AI support in Theia, we have Theia AI, which is a framework for building AI tools in IDEs. Now, what does that mean? If you build an AI tool, you need to cover a lot of basic functionality, like typically you want to provide a chat, maybe embed the chat into other components. You need to be able to create agents. These agents need to communicate with each other. They need to be able to call tools, potentially MCP tools. You want to potentially integrate external agents, and you need the whole LLM communication layer. And now this is a lot of boilerplate, and that's what Theia AI basically provides to you. So if you want to build an AI native tool or AI enhanced tool, it will take a lot of the burden away and allow you to really focus on your domains. And a lot of customers are doing that in all sorts of different domains, not only code. Now, there is one publicly available tool that showcases a lot of these features, and that's the AI-powered Theia IDE that you can download and use, and that contains a lot of these features. Now, what's interesting about the Theia IDE in combination with Theia AI is that we have built the Theia IDE very flexible when it comes to AI. So it kind of exposes a lot of the features of the framework. If you build your own tool, you don't necessarily have to do that, but in the Theia IDE, the user can basically tweak everything. You can see all prompts, you can change them, and so on. Now, looking at the time, I only want to do a very short demonstration. I want to show 3 quick things that you can do in the Theia IDE. Keep in mind, this shows an underlying framework where you can also build different things than coding environments. All right, so this is the Theia IDE. And what we have here, I generated this before this presentation. This is a simple calculator app. We can see here some code where it does calculations and so on. I did that before because this generation typically takes 5 minutes and I didn't want to lose that, but I could now easily iterate on this. So for example, I could say here, ask AI, hey, could you please add some documentation to this code? And then we see the LLM is asked. It can access this file as you're used to from other coding tools, and then it will suggest some documentation. And in a second, I will be able to review the changes and then decide whether I want to apply them or not. So it's fairly slow at the moment. The issue with AI demonstrations is always you never know how reliable the underlying AI is because it's indeterministic. And I was demonstrating this a lot over the last year. And typically when I want to demonstrate it, the underlying LLM provider is pretty slow. So let's look at that. Yeah, it added nice documentation, and I could accept or decline that. Speaking about the LLM provider, what's pretty important to know is, and I can show you that here, LLM, so Theia AI is really LLM agnostic. We support all sorts of different LLMs. You can see I have a long list configured, so you can talk to OpenAI, to Anthropic, to your own hosted ones, to DeepSeek or whatever. So we really try to be as compatible as possible with many LLMs and LLM providers. All right, now let me do something more fun, the second demo. And for this, let me actually quickly start this application so that you get an impression what it is. Let me quickly go over here, just like this. So this is a simple calculator. As mentioned, this is fully generated, so I can do math here. But now I want to make it ready for my OCX presentation. So what I do now, and sorry to do this fast, what I want to do is I want to make it styled as OCX. And to get the styles into the IDE, let me take a little screenshot here. And then let me go back to the IDE quickly and start a new session. And now what I do is I tell another agent that's called architect. Let me actually start this and then look at the prompt. Hey, look at the attached picture. Defining my corporate identity. I need to fix my current application based on this. We want to extract the colors but not use the logo. Now what the so a feature that is revealed here, obviously we support images, and that you get that for free if you need that in your own tool. And now what the agent is basically doing is analyze the image and extracting some color guidelines for this. So you can see that here. Now, I used purposely an agent that cannot code itself. So this agent is basically only for architecture, but we provide nice follow-up actions here. So what I now did is I clicked on this link here, and what that will do is it will summarize this CI guideline that architect produced by analyzing this feature as a coding task. And that makes it very easy for me to afterwards hand this over to a coding agent. If you work with AI coding agents, you might know that this concept of externalizing a prompt before you actually send it to a coding agent becomes more and more popular. And now we see here, this is actually what it produced. So it says, okay, update the visual designs. And then here's very detailed specification for the coding agent, what it is supposed to do. And then let me just hit enter here. Now what this will do is it will basically input this file into the coding agent. So that the coding agent can basically do its work and update my underlying application based on these guidelines. So while this is working, let me already open the file for the last demonstration, which will be a quick one. And don't worry, after that, I'm almost done. I only have, I think, 3 very quick slides at the end. All right, so now I've updated the CSS style. I would just apply this immediately. And then let me reload this. And boom, now we have a calculator app in the style of OCX. Now, the last thing that I want to show is the full power. And the full power of such an environment arises when you combine different agents. And Theia AI provides support for that. So what I will do before I start this, let me introduce a bug into my application. Now, what we see here, this is the calculate function. And here we have the multiply case. And let me purposely destroy this by making the calculate operation a plus operation. So what I did now is I introduced a bug into my application. And let me restart my application. And now what I will do is I will use another agent that we support here called the app tester. Let me hit enter. And let me actually start already this so I can explain this. And I will task app tester, hey, test my calculator app on localhost 3000. Let me move that over here so you can observe that. And do not test the expression, only focus on the upper part. Now, what it asks me to do directly after that is to start an MCP server. And this MCP server provides access for this agent here to control the browser. And what you can observe now here is that it actually controls my browser and tests the application, fully automatic, right? So I didn't specify any test cases. I just told, hey, test the application, and you can see it's still doing that. It's pressing buttons magically, and it already found an issue, as you can see, because I introduced that beforehand. And if it actually confirmed this issue, what this agent would even do, because I configured it to do that, it will report this issue to my GitHub repository. And that's using another MCP server. So it will literally, at the end of this run, there will be a GitHub issue in my repository that is perfectly described because it knows exactly the steps to reproduce. All right, I will let this run. Maybe during the question section, I can show the result finally. Let me get to my final slides. All right, so you might wonder who's using this project, who's contributing to this. On our homepage, we have a long list of logos of companies that added the logo that are either contributing, adopting the technology, or both. But maybe more impressive and more useful than this list, I want to highlight one article that was recently published by Thomas Froment from the Eclipse Foundation that I find pretty cool. It's called The Active Ecosystem of Eclipse Theia Adopters. And this goes really through all the known tools, all the tools that we know that adopt Theia, describes their purpose, as nice screenshots. So really, this is a recommendation, a must read if you're interested. So scan the QR code to get a link to this article. And thank you very much for publishing that. That's a pretty great piece of information. Speaking about information, so quick words about the Theia ecosystem. I would keep this short. If you're familiar with Eclipse, Theia is a standard Eclipse project. It's a core project in the Eclipse Cloud DevTools working group. The license is EPL2 plus MIT for some parts, for example, the prompts. It's very continuous, so we publish community releases. We are compatible with VS Code. We have a very stable and diverse community. And really, this is an open alternative to existing proprietary ecosystems. And with that, if you are interested in more demonstrations, unfortunately, I could not show all the demonstrations I planned for today due to time reasons. But we currently publish a lot of these demonstrations in short YouTube videos. So under this link here, if you want to scan this, you find a link to our YouTube channel where you can see a lot of different demonstrations, and you might recognize the face. So I'm doing a lot of these demonstrations. And in addition, if you have questions about Theia, of course, you can raise them later. But we also recently updated our Theia FAQ for adopters and users. So scan the link down here to get a link to this article directly. And with that, thank you for watching this talk. I'm happy to take any questions after the last talk. I hope to see you at OCX 2026, where we expect, of course, a lot of content around Theia and AI. And with that, yeah, looking forward to the last talk.
Yes, thank you, Jonas. And now I will give the floor to Hannes.
Yes, thank you very much. And yes, okay, I see you see my screen. Yeah, welcome everyone. And I would like to talk today about how to contribute to the Eclipse IDE. And I will also show you a little quick demo and make it a live walkthrough where we try to fix or implement a little enhancement into Eclipse. So, since the time is very advanced already, I skipped the agenda and will just start with the motivation why you might be interested in contributing into the Eclipse IDE or what is beneficial about this. So, first of all, if you're contributing to the Eclipse IDE, it's a chance to enhance Eclipse or the Eclipse platform in the way you need it to be. So you can, for example, propose features that you really need for your work with the Eclipse IDE, or you can fix or make sure bugs are fixed that are bothering you much more than it seems to bother different or other people that haven't fixed it yet. So it is really a chance or a possibility to enhance the tool that you're working with maybe every day in the way you need it to have. And of course, it's not only enhancing enhancing your tools, it's also about enhancing yourself. So if you're working on a large scale project like the Eclipse platform or the Eclipse IDE in general and all these projects, you can also learn a lot and by working on these features and discussing with proven Eclipse and Java experts that are also contributing to the Eclipse platform and IDE and with the committers. Of course, this then also gives you the ability or to gain visibility in the community and also more maybe even beyond that. So if you're a frequent Eclipse committer and maybe contributor and maybe become a committer later, it will probably also be beneficial for your resume in case you want to have that. Of course, it's not only contributing to yourself, but you're also contributing to a sustainable future of the Eclipse platform and Eclipse IDE. So your contribution will make Eclipse better. And this might again attract other contributors that then maybe implement new features that you will enjoy as well. So this can be a circle, and everybody can benefit from it, because the Eclipse IDE as a whole is an open source project and also a community project. So it's developed by a community of individuals and companies that are interested in the continued success of the Eclipse platform and the Eclipse IDE. And that's what I'm here today as well, trying to motivate you to become part of this community. So while we welcome every kind of contribution at different skill levels, we observed in the past that there are some skills that we really recommend you to gather in advance to make also your experience better if you're contributing to Eclipse and make your life simpler, and as well as the life of committers that are reviewing your changes. And since Eclipse is written in Java, it's of course beneficial, or probably a requirement, to be proficient in Java. Of course, you don't have to be the best expert in the world, but it is good if you know the basics and you can handle it quite well. And of course, since Eclipse projects are mainly hosted on GitHub and are managed by the Git version control system, it is very helpful if you're proficient with Git and GitHub, and especially with the triangular workflow that is employed by GitHub, where the main repository, the origin, is hosted on the GitHub website. And you then fetch it or clone it to your local clone to do changes locally, which you then again push into your fork that is also on GitHub, and then create a pull request from. So there are plenty of guides in the internet out there about Git basics and GitHub, and of course also for Java as well. But it is beneficial if you are already familiar with these kind of workflows. What exactly required skills, or what skills you then exactly require for your specific tasks, of course, depend on your specific goal. If you want to contribute something to the Eclipse platform, or you want to do some plugin development, it's of course helpful if you're familiar with these. If you want to improve the UI and UX, it is no surprise that it helps if you're familiar, maybe even with UI, UX theory and practice. If you want to enhance the Eclipse Java compiler, which is to be frank, a quite advanced topic, but if you are familiar with that, you of course need the knowledge into compiler technology. And if you want to work on the basic runtime of Eclipse, the Equinox OSGI framework, it is of course helpful to know OSGI. But you can also start small, and nobody is born as an expert. So it is not required to be very, very highly skilled on all of these topics. But if you are familiar with the basics in Git and Java, then you can already start with small things and learn on your way, like many people have done. The Eclipse IDE itself is actually composed from many independent Eclipse Foundation projects. So there is not just one Eclipse IDE project, and this also has the consequence that all of these projects have reside on their own location. So there is unfortunately not one place anymore where you can, for example, report bugs or get the code from. But all of these projects are currently in their own GitHub organization, or if they're, for example, some projects are also hosted on the Eclipse Foundation GitLab instance, or are even hosted on GitHub. But in general, these projects are independent and therefore also distributed where they reside. And it might not be that simple to find, but I will try to help you with that in a minute. Although all these projects are independent, they are releasing in a coordinated process called the Eclipse Simultaneous Release, where where the final Eclipse IDE packages are built from, that you might know from the eclipse.org download website. And in general, if I have convinced you to contribute to Eclipse or the Eclipse IDE now, I strongly recommend you to look at our contribution starting point at the github.com/Eclipse IDE page. This page provides you all or many of the explanations I'm giving or already gave and will be giving through this talk, and will also guide you through the contribution process. And especially for this point, it also provides a project discovery guide that tries to help you find the right projects where you actually want to contribute to, because you have something specific in your mind. So two main tools to find the right places to find the place where the code resides that you want to change are on one hand Eclipse Spice that you can open with Alt-Shift F1, which I will show you in a minute, and of course are stack traces that you can have a look at, for example, in the error log of the Eclipse IDE. And if you already have a more specific idea where, or for example, you know already the project where you want to contribute to, or you want to contribute a change to, then it can, for example, be a strategy to search for labeled text to then eventually find the actual place to contribute to. So let's go to the demo. I assume many of you have already used the Eclipse IDE or Eclipse platform. And now I pretend I'm a regular user of the Eclipse IDE, and I have here checked out some of the workspaces of the Eclipse platform, and have here basically just opened the standard manifest MF editor. And I'm clicking here through these tabs, and I noticed that I, for example, find this dependency analysis tab very interesting, and think it should be highlighted better. So my idea that I want to contribute to the Eclipse IDE is now to make this section expanded by default, which you can also, for example, see in other areas. Not a good for example, in this area, we have also a section here that is foldable, but that is expanded by default. And I think now we should expand this dependency analysis section by default. So if I now want to find out, okay, where is the corresponding code to expand this, I can use the mentioned plugin Spice and hit Alt-Shift F1. And if I click it here, I see here the plugin Spice selection and see various information about the area below the cursor. If I, for example, click on another area, then I see different information. And but coming back to this one, you can here, for example, see that the active part is the manifest editor, which is not a surprise as we're modifying manifest. And the contributing plugin is named org-eclipse.pde.ui. And the source repository where this plugin is currently hosted is github.com/eclipse-pde/pde eclipse.pde. So I can just open this link, and I get here in the browser and reach the Eclipse PDE project website immediately. So you can, for example, create an issue if you want to, if you, for example, have found a bug or something, or start a discussion if you want to discuss something. I now pretend that I've made some research and searched issues and have found an issue that suggests to make the functionality to remove unused dependency more prominently. And well, okay, I've already added there a comment some time ago suggesting to unfold the expand dependency analysis button by default. So while it's definitely not necessary to create an issue in advance, it can sometimes help you if you're unsure how a change should be implemented. And to discuss, for example, a strategy for a solution in advance. But now we also have an issue here that we can maybe reference, and so we can continue with that, and we can continue with setting up our workspace to do the code change and push the pull request. If you have used the Eclipse IDE already, you might have already heard from the Eclipse installer. Have probably used it. You can, for example, if you go to eclipse.org and download, you can here download the Eclipse installer for your architecture and an operating system. Of course, you can also download pre-packaged Eclipse versions of Eclipse IDE, but in this case, we use the installer, which makes many things much more simple. I have already downloaded the installer and made some caches so that we can speed this up a little bit. But it is actually very simple. You download it, you execute the executable, and then you will be presented with this simple version of the installer. For this, as we want to do some commits or commit to Eclipse itself, we use the Eclipse IDE for Eclipse committers. Select the latest release version, use the pre-selected Java version 21, which is running well with Eclipse currently. And then we choose a location where we want to install the Eclipse committers version. That's it. And then we hit the install button. Now it's installing everything. It's downloading all the jars that are required to assemble the selected Eclipse package, in this case, the Eclipse committers version. If you're doing it the very first time, it may take a little bit longer, but as I assume that you don't want to see my progress bar or progressing on download bar progressing here, I'm already made it in advance so that the caches are hot. But still, all of this is now, the installation itself is now done live. So we already have done this. We've now created our installation for Eclipse committers package. We can then select the workspace. Of course, you can place these workspaces wherever you want. I usually have a structure where I group all my workspaces together in one folder. I call workspaces, but everyone can choose their own schema there. Now that we have started now we are starting Eclipse for the first time. We won't need the Microsoft Defender exclusion here. It's starting quickly enough. And now we, of course, have the question, how do we set up? Now we have created the workspace, but how do we get source code and set up everything to do the changes and do some contributions? And for this, we have provided a contributor button, or respectively an OOM setup for each of the Eclipse projects. In this case, this is and these buttons look similar like this one, and they are usually just mentioning an individual project in this on the right hand side here. But of course, if you get the button from the project, you can assume that it's for that corresponding project. So and you can use this now as follows. You go on import projects, select projects from catalog, and then you can just use this button, drag and drop it here. You will be directly moved to the variables page to do some final selection. And in this case, we just have to select where we place our Git clone, or local Git clone of the GitHub repository. We choose the rule here located in a folder named repo within the root Git container folder, as I like to use the same structure like for my workspaces, have all my Git repositories in one folder. It's already pre-selected at this path. The GitHub repository URL is of course fine, and Jerry 21 location is also fine already. So I just hit next, finish this dialog, let it run. And it is now installing a few additional bundles and is modifying the INI. So I just have to restart. But after the restart, all the imports of the project should now be running. All right. We are now seeing that the setup is running again. And we are seeing that it's now starting to import all the repository, all the projects. I've already cloned the repository in advance so that you don't have to see my download button progress again. But as you can see, this all the tasks that are done are not different. It's just now a little bit quicker. So in the meantime, we can again go back to our initial Eclipse installation that we used and check again where we actually, now that we are about to have the Eclipse workspace, which is now just building again, the Eclipse IDE workspace, we are going back to the original IDE and look again where the name of the class that is responsible to show this this section. And we see here the active form page is the dependencies page. So we'll copy this name of this class and then go back to our PDE workspace. And we'll just close this in advance as this is currently not working, but everything else is working well. So yeah, we have now got the name of this class. We will search for it, find the resource dependencies page Java, and then we can present it with this class here. And then it's of course the question where exactly we can expand this section. But if you're, for example, as it's named dependency analysis, we can, for example, search for analysis and we'll just find here a class dependency analysis section. And we'll then see, okay, this is created with two different modes, either in compact mode and expanded mode. So this might be exactly what we want to do. And yeah, as it's initially expanded, we now try to compact, we try to change it to expanded. And then, yeah, in order to verify that this is the actual change we want to do, we just create a secondary Eclipse, launch it from this Eclipse, just go under run configuration, create a new Eclipse application, just name it Eclipse, and leave everything as the default, which usually works quite well. And then just start it, have a secondary Eclipse created, create a very simple plugin project here just to have a manifest that we can check. We name it just foobar, nothing special. Go through this dialog, through this wizard. Don't open any perspective. Let's see at the manifest, and then go to dependencies tab, and voila, the tab is open by default as we desired to have. So it looks like the change we applied has the desired effect, and that's what we want to do. Okay, great. So we can close the secondary Eclipse again, and now can make the commit as we have made a change here. We switch to the Git perspective, look at the Git staging of this repository we have here, and see, okay, we have made this change here from compact to expanded as we expected. And now we can stage this change, enter a meaningful commit message, which is not really surprising. I just prepared just to be a little bit quicker. Expand dependency analysis section by default. Maybe we enhance this a little bit of the manifest editor section of the manifest editor by default. And as we found an issue before, it is usually good practice then to reference this issue as well. As we're probably not resolving this issue, we won't say, if you have an issue that you're resolving with a specific change, you can just add, for example, fixes and then add the URL. In this case, we will just say it's part of this change, and we are doing a commit, and we're committing this, and now we have done the commit locally. But of course, now we have implemented this change, but we still want to contribute this change back. So in order to do this, we have to go back and first talk about the formal requirements for a contribution, which are actually not that much, but for in order to cover all the copyright and for legal things, you are required to create an Eclipse Foundation account. and to sign the Eclipse Contributor Agreement, the ECA. And in order to make this work, you should also connect your Eclipse Foundation account to your GitHub account. In order to be able to do that, you of course also need a GitHub account, which is also, I think, obvious, as these projects are hosted on GitHub. You need an account for this platform in order to be able to work there. Then you can also, it's also recommended to use SSH keys to do the connection, to create a secure connection. Alternatively, if you don't want to use this, you can use basic authentication, but this is a choice you have. If you're using SSH, you should also, of course, make sure that you have the corresponding keys of your local machine set up. Okay, let's go back to the demo. Let's take this one. Now that in order to make a contribution, I already explained to you that GitHub is using the triangular workflow. So if you have a GitHub account, you can then create a fork of the Eclipse IDE repository, for example, by clicking simply this button. I've already done this in the past. And then you can reach your own fork and, for example, use SSH to get the URL and to set up your remote. If you exactly. Now you have to configure your local repository to have this fork. And as you see, I prepared this already a little bit too far. And yeah, in order to add this fork, you can either do this through the UI, or you can do it, if you want to do it a little bit more low level, you can simply immediately open the git config of this repository by going through the properties and opening the git config file, which I've already done here. And in order to then set up your fork remote, you can simply copy the origin remote that is created here, adjust the URL to the URL of your fork, and also give it a different name. In this case, I name it fork. And I also adjust the remote repository name in this fetch property here. You can then also change it, for example, to fetch all the branches from your fork if you want to do this, not only the master branch. All right, now we have set up the fork. We have an Eclipse Foundation account. We have, of course, a GitHub account. SSH keys should be working. Now we are ready to push this change. And yeah. We can now click here on push branch, select the remote we want to push to. In this case, we want to push to our fork. If you're a first-time contributor and not a committer, you don't have right access to the origin repository anyway. So if you're trying to push to this repository directly to the origin, it will probably fail. But yeah, nothing to worry about. So yeah, simply select your fork. And then we can, for example, create a branch, name it expand dependency analysis, and you should hit the push button. Now it's pushing the change, and we already get here a little message dialog that already proposes us to create a new pull request by clicking on this link. We will do this. We get into our browser. And then we are here in the Eclipse IDE repository and see that we are already set up to create a PR. The PR is by default filled with the headline from the commit and the message body from your commit. And yeah, so in this case, everything is fine. And we just create a PR so that it can be reviewed by the committers of the projects. If you're, it's usually then the case that you're receiving feedback from committers about your change. It's usually not the case that, especially for larger changes, it is not uncommon that there is a request for changes, but this is all not a problem. In case you get feedback for changes, you can simply adapt this. Okay, I don't put this. And you then, if you, for example, get the feedback that you should add a comment to this line, then you can simply go back to your IDE, change it, and yeah, expand by default. In this case, this is not really a reasonable comment to add actually, but I just want to demonstrate how you can, for example, address requests for changes. So yeah, we want to add this comment now. We see we have this in the div. And now there are different ways to implement this request for change. The way we usually prefer is to simply amend the commit that you've already pushed. And in this case, you can just do this in the Git staging view here by clicking the amend button after when you've staged changes. And then you can simply commit it. And then you will, for example, see in the history that you have now your local branch has now diverged from the branch you have pushed. And it's a little bit different, but you can then simply push it again by just going to the push dialog again and say that you want to force override your change on your branch. Then you push again to your branch, and then you will see. And yeah, exactly. You get feedback quite quickly, or often quite quickly, and yeah. Let's see. All right. So, and then you can, for example, see here what the change you've just pushed. Maybe we can just convert this to a draft so that my fellow committers don't get too busy on this one. All right, and that was basically it. These were all the steps to create a pull request in one of the Eclipse platform repositories in order to implement a little change. So if your changes get bigger, of course, if you're contributing, it is usually the case that contributions get bigger, but the basic workflow stays the same for all, independently of the size of the change. All right. Then we have covered this, and I think as we are pretty much over the time, I think I will close my sessions here. In general, we hope regarding Git commit recommendations, we just hope for the usual, try to keep commits and PRs small and self-contained, and have descriptive commit messages. And as I've shown you already, we prefer usually to amend and squash and force push to your PR branch if you want to apply updates. We prefer not to have merge commits in the Eclipse platform and in most of the Eclipse top level repositories. However, there is no rule without exception. So if you're in doubt, simply just ask before before doing maybe something destructive. But usually, if you don't have right access, you can actually don't break anything severely. So don't be afraid, simply ask. So that's it from my side. Thank you for your attention, and let's get back to our host.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Hannes. And I really want to thank all our speakers for those great presentation. It doesn't seem that there is a question, but if you have any question, feel free to ask it in the chat or in the Ask a Question tab. So I will do the raffle right now. Let's see if people are having a question, and then we will go back to the question then. So now it's time for the raffle giveaway. We have uploaded the list of attendees to the Raffle website, and the system will randomly select our winners live on screen. So I will share my screen myself. I already uploaded the name. And then let's see who's gonna win the prizes right now live. So here are our winners. Congratulations to our winners. We will contact you about collecting your gift shortly. I will check another time if there is some question. It seems that the presentation were very clear. So I would like really to thanks our speakers, and just to let you know that also everyone attending the webinar lives gets 50 discount on the OCX early bird tickets. You will receive email instructions soon. If you liked this webinar, we have more of them coming up this week. You can find the link in the chat and register for the next ones. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to see you at OCX 2026 in Brussels in April. Bye!